everyone, and welcome to another webisode of All Politics Are Local. I'm WSAV Now reporter John Dowding. Every week, we take the time to break down some of those big headlines coming out of Washington to see how it impacts us right here in the Coastal Empire and Low Country. As always, we're being joined by WSAV Washington correspondent Kelly Meyer in the Capitol. Hey, Kelly, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, John. Thank you for having me as always.
Of course, I mean, we have a lot to discuss this week. We had a historic week in Washington last week with the inauguration, all of the different changes because of the pandemic, a whole slew of new executive orders, but we're not even going to touch that right now. We're going to start with the impending impeachment trial, other I word going on right now in Washington. Not much going on as far as procedure right now, and we're hearing about some delays with the trial that's expected to start. So, Kelly, break that down for us. Explain to us, first of all, how. First of all, let's just to be completely honest, if the Senate is even going to go to a trial, because there's a lot of Republican senators who are arguing that this is unconstitutional, for starters, and also when is this process and this trial going to begin?
It's a really interesting time frame, John, because we, as you said, had the inauguration last week, and swore in the new senators from Georgia. Democrats officially took control of the Senate, and then they kind of laid out this time frame. And Schumer, the new Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, came to the floor and said, "Okay, the House is going to deliver the article of impeachment Monday, and we are going to start a trial Tuesday." That would be tomorrow, Tuesday. And then you heard President Joe Biden asked about it about a couple hours later, and said he kind of agreed with delaying the start of the beginning of the trial so he could get his cabinet in order. And that's something that former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said was the right idea, to delay the trial, to give former President Trump, a chance to form his defense and his defense team, and then also giving time for Biden to fill his cabinet and get to work, deal with COVID, of course, and then come back to the trial. So you heard even House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying, "We're going to deliver this on Monday. It's going to kick off," kind of thing. It just didn't seem like everybody was on the same page in terms of Democrats. And once Biden said that, things changed, and then it reversed, and they said, "Okay, here's the deal. Here's the agreement. We're going to delay the start of the trial until February 8th. But we are still waiting for that formal ceremonial walking of the article of impeachment, physically walking the impeachment article from the House side to the Senate. You will see that tonight. But the start of the trial will be delayed in order for the cabinet to be confirmed, and maybe even get into a COVID relief package."
And I mean, I think President Biden I'm sorry, it's just still weird to call him President Biden now. I almost said vice in front of that. But
Right.
I think President Biden is in a tough position because if he comes out and is like, "Yeah, you can move forward with the impeachment trial, go ahead and do it," he's almost setting a presidential precedent by saying, like, "Yeah, you can go ahead and hold former elected officials accountable after they leave the term." So I think he's trying to avoid any discussions of that may bring up a constitutional crisis. And like you said, focus on him just saying, "I want to get my cabinet picks in. I want to, get started on, bringing relief to the pandemic." He's been pushing for a new COVID relief stimulus bill. He's asking for 1.9 trillion. And a lot of lawmakers are saying that's a little too high of a price tag. But, I think he's really trying to, like you said, push his agenda, his legislative agenda, and different areas of that as instead of focusing on this impeachment trial. I think a lot of people just want Trump to go quietly into that, what I forget the name of the poem, but go silently into that cold night or whatever it is. I'm not that intellectual. But I think a lot of people just kind of want Trump to fade away, settle down in Mar-a-Lago, and I think that's what Republicans actually are signaling. But again, we'll just keep you updated with all of that. That's going to be happening in the month of February, roughly about a year after the first impeachment trial. It's kind of
Right. We're doing it again. Yeah.
we're doing it all over again. But the biggest thing, obviously, coming out of the Capitol last week was this historic inauguration. Not just historic in the sense of the oldest president being sworn into office and the first African American, Asian American, female vice president being sworn into office. But the fact that it was going on in a pandemic, a week or two after the Capitol was attacked by a mob of far right insurrectionists, just a lot of firsts happening that day. Kelly, walk us through some of the feelings. You were in the Capitol when that all of that was happening, with the over 20,000 National Guard troops stationed across the Capitol, like hundred, so many streets shut down. I shouldn't say hundred, so many streets shut down all around the Capitol. Kelly, just walk us through that day, that week. It must have been, you were in Washington during a historic moment.
Yeah, and it felt so different from previous inaugurations. I mean, I've only been at one other as a reporter, but to have covered the parade down Pennsylvania Avenue and seeing all the crowds and vendors selling, at that time it was Trump Pence, and this time it would have been Biden Harris. It was different on so many levels, not only because of the pandemic, but because of the attack on the Capitol just 2 weeks before that. So it was very different. And, by watching the traditional pomp and circumstance, it almost was like you forgot that all of that was going on, because it did, try to make it feel normal in a sense, minus that people were wearing masks and things like that. But it still was a very historic moment, as you mentioned. And not only Biden and Harris sworn in on that day, but two Georgia senators sworn in on that day. We were able to catch up with Senator Raphael Warnock the day after about what it means to be on Capitol Hill at this time, helping usher in that Democratic majority, and how he's going to work with the Biden administration as well as fellow Republicans. So let's take a listen to what he had to say.
We will have to find a way in this defining moment in American history to reach across partisan lines and all of these other lines and get the people of Georgia and the people of America the relief that they need. We need COVID relief. It's urgent. It needs to be centered around workers and struggling families. And we've got to get this vaccine safely and efficiently distributed, and then begin to reinvest in our economy in such a way that we get it roaring again.
And President Biden talked a lot about unifying and unity in his speech. And really, the work is right there for him as soon as he gets started. Right within his 24 hours, he signed some executive orders, which weren't exactly received well by Republicans, like Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and others. So he definitely has this fine line to walk. And as you mentioned too, as we were discussing impeachment, he's very much trying to leave that decision up to Congress and somewhat wipe his hands clean of it, just to kind of focus on his own presidency, in order not to try to ruffle any feathers, because that is such a divisive thing. And he really is trying to come in here and unify a very divided Capitol Hill.
And I think too, something interesting is, Biden, the Senate chamber Biden is no stranger to the Senate chamber. That he was one of the youngest senators elected into office. John Ossoff actually beat him now this year. John Ossoff is the youngest senator elected into office. But so he is no stranger to having to reach across the aisle in a bipartisan manner. And I think that is something that he wants to, and you said it perfectly in his inauguration speech, was the theme was about unity and bipartisanship and working together again. That, bipartisanship seemed to be a taboo over the last 4 years. And I think that is something that President Biden wants to focus more on. And that is why he, like you said, doesn't want to touch impeachment and is focusing on all of these things. Now, I mean, the executive orders were no surprise. He said he was going to sign a slew of them on the first day in office, keeping up with a lot of his, promises that he said. He just repealed the transgender military ban that was from the Trump presidency, and he was just undoing a lot of those Trump era executive orders, I should say. And I think something else worth noting is the fact that we saw Republicans take advantage of the majority status, in the sense of they were in the majority. They just moved forward because they could. They didn't need to reach across the aisle. They had the numbers. They had the people on their side, so they could go ahead and push their legislation. But now the House majority for Democrats is slim. The Senate majority is even slimmer, and the presidency is the only office where we see one obvious party in power. So that puts the president in a really unique position where he needs to push bipartisanship. And so I think when we look ahead past these executive orders, that's really going to be a major theme that President Biden is going to have to focus on, how he's going to be able to accomplish his administration's goals while being able to still reach across the aisle and get support from Republicans.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it well there. And I think people see or hear that Democrats have the majority in both the House and the Senate, but what maybe people don't think about is how, like you said, slim that is. Um, it's really a 50-50 split until you bring in Vice President Kamala Harris for the Senate, and they can't afford to lose any Democrats on a certain vote. So they're in the majority, but just barely. So it really does stress the need for bipartisanship, and that's something that I think President Biden has said all along the way throughout his campaign, that he wants to be a president for all Americans, not just for Democrats. And even in his speech on Wednesday, said that he wanted to make sure he reached out to those who didn't vote for him and see if he could get his support, or get their support. And if they don't support him, he says that's fine. We can disagree, just in a nonviolent way. So I think he definitely has his work cut out for him, and there is definitely a lot ahead for Capitol Hill to reach an agreement and to see how Republican side and Democrat side. It's going to be very interesting.
And I think it's a far cry from the American Carnage speech we heard on Inauguration Day 4 years ago from former President Trump. Definitely a completely opposite theming that President Biden spoke on. But you also spoke to some Republican members of Congress as well as the first couple days of the Biden administration began. What are their thoughts? How are they feeling about this new administration coming in?
Well, I talked to Florida Senator Rick Scott, who also is leading the National Republican Senate Committee, trying to reelect or elect more Republicans to the Senate. He believes they'll take back the majority in the next election. He is not happy with what Biden has said so far. He says he talks the talk, but he isn't necessarily walking the walk as he enters his first few days in office. He wasn't happy with the steps that he took to reverse some of former President Trump's actions, like rejoining the WHO, World Health Organization, like rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, things like that. I also talked to Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville, the new senator there. He's not happy with it either. And on impeachment, he doesn't think it should happen. He's actually calling on President Biden to call it off. He wants President Biden to make a stand or take a stand and say, let's not even do this at all.
Just me being here in a couple of weeks, I've been astounded of how much division. People won't talk. They've got to have it their way. That's not how it works. We do it the American way. We do it for everybody. And I think President Biden's a guy that can get it done, but it's like this impeachment trial. I wish today he'd come out and say enough's enough. This is not going to help the American people. What we got to do for the American people is get rid of this virus.
And it's the complete opposite of what we're hearing from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who's basically saying you need to hold certain people accountable, and not just Nancy Pelosi, Senator Mitt Romney, a Republican from Utah, over the weekend, saying the same thing, that if insurrectionists can storm the Capitol, then what isn't impeachable? If we let that go, then impeachment just means nothing anymore. So I think they bring up a lot of great points. It's just, honestly, it's coming down to, I feel like, the main theme of Biden's inauguration speech about unity, trying to find that commonality in such a polarized time in our nation's history. But Kelly, thank you so much for joining us, as always, especially after this historic week. I know the next couple of weeks, the first 100 days, are going to be even crazier as we get, administration officials verified and confirmed in Congress, and new COVID relief. We're seeing a lot going on right now. So thank you so much, Kelly, for keeping an eye on all of it.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.
You can see more of Kelly's stories on our website. Just go to wsab.com/Washington. And you can catch up on previous episodes of All Politics Are Local on our website as well. Just go to wsab.com/allpoliticsarelocal. Thank you so much again for watching. I'm John Dowding. We'll see you again next week on All Politics Are Local.